When we are born, we are not only born into our families, but into a larger group with cultures and traditions that make up a society and, in general, a country. Our cultures, tradition, and customs are integral to our existence. And that is why every September 24th, South Africans decided to create a day to honor and celebrate the culture and heritage of South Africa. And joining me live here to discuss this issue and, of course, to shed more light on Heritage Day is the Consul General of the Republic of South Africa to Nigeria, Mr. Darkey, Africa. It's so good to have you with us here.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you also. So we're looking at this now. We're looking at the Heritage Day in South Africa, celebrating the customs and traditions. Now, before now, we do know that 24th of September was called the Shaka's Day to celebrate the King Shaka Zulu, popularly called. But recently, or rather in 1995, we had it changed to the Heritage Day. What was the major driving factor to change the Shaka's Day to Heritage Day? It could have been any other day.
Well, maybe we need to look a little bit into the history of South Africa.
Okay.
As you all may know, South Africa was under apartheid for a very long time. All the groups or ethnic groups were divided, and each one, you know, depending on the language they spoke, would have their own Bantustan, which is their own place. And the entire struggle was based on bringing the people of South Africa together. Of course, based on the Freedom Charter, which was adopted in 1955. The Freedom Charter said South Africa belongs to all who live in it. And it also proclaims that all national groups shall have equal rights. And therefore, when 1994 came, there was a discussion, you know, within all the leadership in the country. And we knew that, of course, that day was celebrated as a victory for a particular national group in honor of a warrior of that group, the Zulu Nation. And therefore, for us to be able to unite the country, subsequent to the adoption of the country's constitution, which constitution in its preamble made reference to the need to unite diverse people and to create one country and to heal the divisions of the past. There was therefore a need to pick up a day on which we will celebrate the diverse cultures of our people with the aim of bringing them together. And the 24th of September was decided and proclaimed as a public holiday to celebrate Heritage Day. But we do not only celebrate Heritage Day on the 24th of September. We declared the entire month Heritage Month. And this is dedicated to one of the greatest women of our time who fought against the system of apartheid and was a leading figure in mobilizing women at the time, Charlotte Maxeke. And therefore, the theme of this year's celebration for Heritage Day is in dedication to her. And this year we're saying that we are celebrating the intangible cultures of South Africa, the living cultures of South Africa.
I like this issue of celebration there, but recently we also celebrated the International Day of Peace. You talked about celebrating culture and bringing peace to the various tribes in South Africa. But many people believe that there is a link between people knowing their heritage, having a sense of belonging, and peace. Since its creation in 1995, as you rightly stated, as Heritage Day, how has this day fostered peace and unity among South Africans?
Well, if you look at the motto of South Africa, it's a motto that was, which comes from a different language. The oldest language of the people of South Africa. Ke ike tsara, ke itzara ike, which means diverse people unite. When you do not know the history of your country and the challenges and tribulations that your country has gone through, you are bound to repeat all the mistakes of the past. And therefore, in our effort to build a united, peaceful country, there are many things that we do to ensure that we can build peace. And remember, South Africa is one of the leading countries that preaches peace across the world based on the spirit of reconciliation, as propounded then by the late President of the Republic of South Africa, Nelson Mandela. He brought all the people together and said, for the sake of this country and for the sake of promoting peace, we need to reconcile as diverse groups. And that is at the center of celebrating our diversity. Quite interestingly, we were called the Rainbow Nation. There was a term coined by Bishop Desmond Tutu, who said, we are a rainbow nation. There were many people who were challenging that notion. But today, people come together across cultures, across race, across groups to have what is called in one of the South African languages, a braai. It's an Afrikaans word which means a barbecue, bring together people there. And there was a lot of resistance to this, but today everybody comes together. And it is not at the expense of creating understanding. Peace is always built on the basis of understanding. We understand each other, we acknowledge each other's existence, and therefore we share a common heritage, and our destinies are bound, and therefore we must live together.
I like the fact you talked about positivity and, of course, progress in South Africa. But as diverse as Africa is, so are many individual countries, and bringing together so many tribes can be such an Herculean task. Now, how can we promote equal representation or equity for the different ethnicities in a country when it comes to political affairs? There's so many talks about misrepresentation of the different groups when it's at the helms of politics.
The foundation and the essence for that is the Constitution, to which, of course, many of the people must owe allegiance. In South Africa's case, we have a Bill of Rights where everyone is free to form their own political party. Everybody, there's freedom of association, freedom of political expression, freedom of religion, and even now, as we go towards the local government elections in our country, people are allowed. You don't need to belong to a political party to participate in the political affairs of your country. You can stand as an individual, stand for elections at national, provincial level. You can present yourself. And that in itself is an opening of the space to allow the population and everyone who desires to participate in the political affairs of the country to do so without any restriction, without any fear, and allowed as well to campaign freely and so on. So we do think that every country must make sure that it creates the space necessary, in Africa in particular, to allow people and individuals to freely participate in the political affairs of the country. Remember, if all the people can deploy their energy in the interest, irrespective of whether they agree or disagree politically or ideologically, but deploy their capacities and energies for the development of the country, that country can prosper.
Okay, talking about equal representation, you talked about expanding the day to be more exclusive to other tribes in South Africa. Earlier on, I asked you why you chose September 24th, which was the Shaka Day, as Heritage Day. Now, in any way, has it affected the commemoration of the Zulu King in KwaZulu-Natal?
No, and as I said, we use the word in South Africa, or the expression united in diversity. The Zulu people can go on this day and go to the grave, to the gravesite of their leader. The Afrikaners can do so. The Xhosa people can do so, but that in itself does not mean, that we don't recognize the overarching theme of coming together as a people. Because if you don't recognize that there are these ethnic groups, you cannot be able to promote social cohesion and national consciousness to build one country united in its diversity.
Okay, we still want to know more about this Heritage Day. How exactly is it typically celebrated? You mentioned braai, meat, barbecue. I was happy when you said that, but we know that COVID-19 has disrupted lots of activities. So for this year, how is it going to be with COVID-19, and generally, what's the celebration about?
Talking about probably what should happen post-COVID. We know the restrictions and we know the challenges. But it doesn't, of course, there is always what is called the national spirit. People have got this spirit, irrespective of the challenges that they may face, that this is the spirit that, this is something that keeps us together, there's something that unites us, and therefore we need to celebrate.
Okay, now let's look at this now. Heritage and culture are very important to South Africans. You've clearly stated it in all your answers, and to Africans around the continent. And we're trying to preserve our culture and heritage. But we are also experiencing globalization, and our cultures and heritage are somewhat changing to adapt to this. How important is it for us to hold on to these things that make us unique?
Colonialism and sometimes the effects of that has had an impact on what we need to preserve. Remember, culture is not static. What we need to preserve in our cultures and so on. But what is key is to teach the youth the history of their country, and of course broadly the history of the continent, and why we need to have the Africa we want as we move towards 2063. We want to build an Africa where we will acknowledge each other as peoples, but also promote the spirit of brotherhood without saying your language is not important to me, therefore you shouldn't speak it. You must communicate with me in a language that you must have learned or adopted elsewhere. So our cultures, different as they may be, diverse as they are, should not be abandoned in pursuit of a single identity.
Now, some say that many countries, African countries, should have one national identity by now. But we know and we see that isn't so. So what are the positives we see in a multicultural Africa?
Well, the beauty of the continent is in the diversity of its cultures and people. If you go to Timbuktu, if you look at you go to different museums here, in particular Nigeria, or you choose to go to any other country, you will see how the different peoples have expressed themselves in the past. And you will see how these are preserved to teach the posterity and other generations that we don't need to abandon this, but we can live together and can live with these things. So I don't see Africa, with all its different cultures and so on, as a problem. I see that as some inspiration. If I want to know anything about a particular group, I must go there, and we can learn a lot. And there's much to learn about different, groups and so on, tribes and in Africa, because the 2063 agenda enjoins us to create the Africa we want. And who are the people who want this Africa? It's the Africans themselves. And they know that they are different. And that in itself is the wealth of Africa. And yet it is possible to create one Africa. And that one Africa will inspire in us a new identity and consciousness as Africans.
When you talk about transmitting to the younger generation, would you also agree with the idea of teaching the younger generation in schools through the African languages? Would you propagate that idea? I know in South Africa, I think in university, they actually do that with the Afrikaner. Would you also propagate that idea for other African countries?
Of course, yes. Of course, every means or language that people can understand the richness, the value, the wealth of their culture better would be important. We made reference to decolonizing, the minds, or decolonizing Africa and making sure that the world is now de-globalizing in a sense, and therefore there's going to be a number of challenges. So the younger generation must be taught. You teach them in their own languages, but you teach them in an appropriate way to understand this wealth, which wealth belongs to them, of course. So I would also say that you need to teach them in their own language. For instance, here there's a wealth of languages and culture. Similarly in Africa, in South Africa, we have a wealth of languages, and we believe that communication and understanding is central, it's key. And therefore, if we want to teach the young generation, let's teach them in the language they would better understand the things that we are telling them about.
Thank you so much, Consul General, for your time. You've been able to explain so much about the Heritage Day in Africa with you. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Of course, we do know that our heritage is our inheritance, and it reflects our cultural benefits, the clothes, the languages, the dressing, the food, and it talks about what we are as Africans. This cultural heritage has been passed on from generation to generations from our forefathers, and it is our collective responsibility to make sure we preserve it for the good of Africa.